Okay, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching this from. I'm Jessica McElveen and I'm here with Holly Bridges, who I've been wanting to chat to for probably about 6 to 12 months now. So we finally have her. She is an author of Reframe Your Thinking Around Autism. She is the director and the owner of Zebra. She is the creator of this incredible technique that she will explain with us around how she works with autism and her autism therapy trainings and toolkits that we'll go into, amongst, I'm sure, a lot of other things. But morning, Holly. Hello, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's really nice to see you.
Oh, thank you. It's good to see you. I love the orange you're bringing to the table this morning. It's good.
Very high vis.
Yeah. So, Holly, I guess for people that may not know you at all, some people may. I know that you've got an awesome book out and you're about to release your second edition one as well, which you'll share. But I guess, where did you start this autism journey? Why have you gone into this type of therapy?
Well, it's fun thinking back because it was a while ago now.
Mm.
I initially just was playing around with the polyvagal theory and running a workshop on brain plasticity, and then it just went. I can almost remember my hands being just drawn to the page. Like it's such a cool theory and it was so potent. So I just it enlivened me. And then I was looking at Nat Banyel's stuff, and it just started to make sense of autism for me, all of that stuff so well. And he's, in his book, Porges' book, he's just got a bit of a section on it. But it was really interesting to extrapolate that theory and then look at what happens for people in shutdown. And it seemed to explain autism so well. And then I went, well, that's an awful lot like me. So it was really interesting at that level to have a very different perception of myself in that way. And I think it's very generous therapy, philosophy or theory, and it enables a kindness. So from there, I wrote the book. And then from there, I went and worked in autism services for ages, in various levels and roles, and saw what was lacking,
Yeah.
which was a lot. And I've got a psych degree, so I can look at it all from lots of different angles. But then the neurotypical thing wasn't so big and the advocacy scene wasn't so big. So it was very clear the level of platitude, the level of superiority working with people, that sort of thing was very, very ingrained still. I mean, it still is, but it's a lot better after most of a decade of people working pretty hard to change it.
Okay.
But I saw what was lacking, and I've always been very interested in body techniques. And it's not a very big extrapolation to say if the body's gone into shutdown, working with the body's quicker. And when you're in shutdown, mental techniques are really hard and you fail. So what's going to work? And then I looked at the work of Nat Banyel and I put her in my book. And then it was very expensive to go and train with her in the US for, leaving your family and all that sort of thing. So I just started tinkering with ideas, which sort of unfolded. So I created my ball exercise, my Hara ball exercise, and the hand points exercise, and just started to see what they could do. So it just went from there, and then it's just moved and moved and moved. So now I'm working with people. I work with a lot of teens. I work with a lot of adults. I work with people with trauma quite a bit now as well, and I work with littlies with their mums or dads. But the teens in particular really like the work because they've tried so much other stuff, and so much of the other stuff's asking them to do things they can't do when they fail, or being very directive and outcomes focused. And none of that, when you look at the really interstitial, the very inner way that the brain learns and the body and the brain interconnect, you need a subtler approach than most of our therapies. And I think we don't understand that well enough. We haven't yet to know how to tinker with it. And then it's one thing to tinker with it with a neurotypical, but when you tinker with it with autistic people, people with ADHD, and even trauma and things, you can play around with it there as well easily. But with the autism stuff in particular, there's such an overlay of attitude and platitude that gets in the way of allowing people to learn and change. And ideas about what autism is. I say there's like a glass ceiling. And so if you think that that's a fixed thing, and it's really hard because the autism advocacy can get cross with my work because they say I'm healing autism. And, you know, like there's such a fine line all the time. But if you want to get past your glass ceiling, if that's all autism is and it's fixed to there, you can't have much change. So you just manage yourself there. If there's a potential for there to be a whole lot more room, so a person feels better in their body, they have really good body awareness, they're synced up better and better aligned with body and brain, they have a capacity to extrapolate their life and get more. And that's what I'm seeing with the work. It's quite life-changing. It's beautiful, but it's very empowering for people.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that the empowering piece really comes from this narrative that we've set the glass ceiling and we've set these limitations on what people and children can or cannot do. And is that what you mean by attitude and platitude? What, can you just explain those terms a little bit for me?
Well, one of the things is it's just been seen as a brain pathology for so long. So there's this massive limitation model, you know, which we are really, you know, chipping into now. But it's that, and it's so ingrained. So, you know, in my courses, the first module is always the history of autism, and we start to unpack all of that because it's a bit for me like racism, where unless you look at your inherent learning, which is over 100 years old, like it's genetically wired into us almost to think like that because of centuries of a way of looking at disability and looking at mental illness. And, you know, autism isn't necessarily either of those things, but it's been put in that basket for so long that even people, when they think they're being really nice, can still be very just slightly a bit better than you know, and know more than you do. So it's really interesting to have a therapy where you go, I have no idea what you need and I don't know what we're going to do, but I got these ideas and I've got this, and we can play here, but your body knows, and it knows what it can do and it knows what it can't do. So let's tinker there and we see what we can do. And they're constantly part of the equation. And they get to say no. And I don't know any more than they do, and their body knows more than both of us. And that's just at a paradigm level. It's such a different approach to, you know, even, I mean, I get in trouble for this too, but even like OT and speech and stuff like that, people have to, they're forced to be very directive in their approach. And a lot of those practitioners are starting to want a lot more and starting to want to broaden it and stretch it and diversify it so that it's more inclusive is sort of the right word, but inclusive of a flexibility.
Sure. And I guess that's where that sense of empowerment comes into it, because they meet with you and they may have only experienced therapists that, you know, have the instructions, that know better or know the particular outcomes. And I imagine that when a child starts to be listened to, or their body starts to be trusted, or they feel like they've got the answers, that's just an incredible space to be in and a space to be guided into. So with your work then, Holly, you know, let's chat about the exciting stuff. Let's chat about, you know, what you love talking about and why you do this, you know, why you continue doing it. So what exactly is the art therapy? I know it's, you know, it's autism reframe technique. You know, you speak about that, you do that, you've created the techniques. What is it? Why does it work? And what changes do you get to see, or whatever you get to see?
I'll work backwards. I'll talk about the changes first, because I think that's fun and that answers your why do I do it.
Yeah.
It's fun. But I have it's sort of weirdly simple and then weirdly hard to explain what it is, because it's so simple. And when you do it, people go, oh, is that all it is? And you're like, yeah, but it also isn't that simple. People often have greatly improved executive functioning, greatly improved working memory, greatly improved coordination. Their vision often improves. I had 3 older women, like between 40 and 60 last year, who had to go and get their eyes retested, and then they didn't need glasses after doing an 8-day set, intensive, because it's so much fun. It's just so, I get these emails from people after they've worked with me going, oh my God, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, just all these changes, and none of them were we trying to achieve. They're just a byproduct of getting the body into the right place. And then if you go back to the polyvagal theory, and then you break down the cranial nerves, which they don't particularly do, but I do, and it's fun, is you look at the cranial nerves, of which the vagus nerve is the biggest one. And then it controls all these other cranial nerves, eyes, ears, head turning muscles, tongue, etc. All of that software, which is our newest evolutionary function, our capacity to socially engage and to be online at a frontal lobe level, all kind of go offline when we go into a sympathetic state, and very much in an immobilized state. And so if you take the premise that if from birth you've always been in an immobilized state for whatever reason, which is very much what autism is, whether it's hyper or hypo kind of presentation, the body's in a real shutdown, and then there's less access to the mind. And so if you take that premise and go, well, if the body's stuck in an immobilized state, what happens if we teach it to come out of an immobilized state? What will happen? And all these things happen because these really interstitial, sorry, it's just my favorite word, but there's all these interstitial nerves. There's ways that all these nerves communicate, and then they communicate with the rest of the body, and then they communicate with the arms and legs, that all blossom. And then the person has this, I call it then like a new hero emerges, because they don't know who they're going to be. And we haven't tried to go, let's turn you into this. It's more like a treasure hunt, and it's an exploration of what can we have if we get your body out of this. So it's lovely. And then you just have to go really slow, because the body knows this, and it's stuck, and it's safe there. And the whole work's about safety. So you have to make enough sense to people. You have to be generous. You have to back off. I liken it now, my favorite thing. If you've seen My Octopus Teacher, that Netflix, it's really good. It's a doco about a man off the South African coast. Really good. And he makes friends with an octopus, and it ends up swimming on his chest. Like, it's really wild. It's beautiful. So I liken the nervous system like that, where the octopus is either really stuck to a rock at the bottom of the ocean or stuck in a cave. And most of our therapies really are about grabbing the octopus out and going, see, you can do this. And the octopus just shuts down again. And it can't, it's got a native response to not want to enjoy that. So you have to make sense to it and invite it out to play. And then you're teaching the nervous system how to do that. And then the person gets used to their nervous system being like that. And because the eyes shift and the vestibular system shifts, and then they might get up and walk around and go, oh, that all feels really different. It's a lot to catch up with. So it's really delicate work. And so it looks really easy. It looks like I do nothing. People go, oh, I'm just going to go and do that now. And I'm like, go for it. But it's very delicate work at a physiological level and a psychological level.
Yeah. I love everything that you're saying, and it makes total sense. And I love that you use the octopus as that. Just, what a great explanation. So what, when you say everybody just thinks that, I do nothing and it's so simple. And I love that you brought up that it takes time, because I think that as you were saying, it's almost become a way of our thinking and our life that we want things to happen very quickly. We want it to be fast. We want things to be fixed fast. I mean, that's what we're seeking. And if we want long-term sustainable growth, evolution, change, whatever you want to call it, then that time is just so critical. The patience, the gentleness, the care that you're talking about is perfect, and it's worth it. So what Give us an example of something that you would do with a client with, either a young child or a teen where they're not feeling safe in their nervous system. They are shut down. And I'm sure there's various things, but what's an example?
Sure. I just want to address what you said before as well. The thing about going fast is you then go into a fix-it model. And people on the spectrum are so used to being fixed and they're broken and blah, 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 blah. And so the minute you try, my work actually ends up being quite fast quite often, but you can't have that as a goal. But you're stealing from people before you start if you do that. No, it's really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I start off, I mean, I can describe some recent work that I did, and I'll kind of describe an intensive, I guess, because that's a nice way of looking at it. What I do, so the intensive is like 8 days. So the first session we have like on the Friday, just to catch up, and so people can see me. A lot of my work's on Zoom, so it's either, and it works perfectly well, surprisingly, but it does. Because it's all about safety and connection. As long as you can create that and get things, sitting right, if the conditions are right and the person feels safe, they'll change. It doesn't have to be me doing it. It's an engagement process. So the first session is sort of just going, hi, how are you? Do you want to know anything? What can I tell you? Often I'll, if it's a good idea, get the mum to model my ball exercise so that the person can see what they're in for. And then they see the body drop. It's a really nice exercise. If you're in a good space and you know where to go to. Like, people on the spectrum and people with ADHD don't really have that point of stillness in them. So if you know that, you can do this exercise for 20 minutes. It's a gym ball that's soft. I just start at sitting up. You just put your feet on the gym ball and pedal like you're riding a bike. And then you stop, close your eyes, do it 3 or 4 times. It can be very destabilizing, by the way. So I don't recommend you just run and do it. I have a real gradient with it, but with the mums, often I'll get them to do that so that the person can see what I'm asking of them, and their octopus can work it out. And if the octopus says yes, we're kind of in. And I have to make the octopus like me. And it's really weird language, but it's kind of like that. So then they have the weekend to kind of get a handle on it. And then we have 5 consecutive days. So then it's like, okay, fine, how are we going to start? And then it really depends on the person. I can have a 14-year-old boy who's pretty reticent. So I have to make enough sense and with some clients, you can just go straight in and go, fine, we're going to start, put your feet on the ball. What's that like? And you work up, and then you add another exercise in and add another one, and you slowly stretch them to a place where they feel really good. But they also know how to do the exercises, so they know how to take themselves into that place. So I'm getting a bit lost. It's different depending on the person. But so if I have a person that's totally in, and I don't have to like do gymnastics to make them love me, so that it works. We do a little and stop and see. And you don't ask a lot of questions, and you're not asking, how do you feel? You don't ask anything, because it's very annoying for people to ask you stuff like that, and it's kind of irrelevant because the octopus isn't using verbal language. And what I think I'm also doing more and more, I'm understanding it these days, is when you look at the polyvagal theory, the emphasis very much is on getting people, like you were saying, snappy again. Let's get your vagus nerve working better. So your social engagement system works. And so it sort of goes into that zippy mode again. When you look at, I'm just looking for a piece of paper, I might draw you a stick figure. When you're looking at how the body finds a point of change, if it's sort of stuck on one train track for ages, it actually has to drop and stop in that empty space so it can flip and go somewhere new. And so you're asking it, you have to safely kind of let it know what you want, and then you're asking it to shift by exercises where the person's fully in charge, and that might be holding an acupressure point. and they might only be able to tolerate that for 3 seconds.
Okay.
And that's all you do. But it's enough sensory information for the system to go, oh, that's a tripwire, and it moves out of its comfort zone a little bit, and then it goes, oh, that's okay, I can handle that. So you're edging the whole time, and then the body's getting used to sensation. So it's biofeedback is one way to look at it, but it's not, we're going to plug you into a machine and do biofeedback. It's proper human skin biofeedback, whether it's your feet on a ball or whatever.
Okay.
What the person can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll stop. You might want to jump in because I'm
rambling. So there's I mean, it can look very different for everybody, and that's perfectly to normal, and that's great. And so we were talking before about, this area of martial arts, and that you just got back from a session for yourself, which is so awesome. I did it when I was young. And it's just the best, and I'd like to get back into it again. But so talk me through why you love it. How does it all link into the work that you're doing? And just, go for it.
I've often likened my work more to a martial art. Okay. Because it's, and if I explain it like this to a 15-year-old boy or girl who's done martial arts training, they're like, oh, now I know what you mean. And I'll go, that cutter, that thing in the middle where that's that point of grace that, you're trying to find, because that's when the body works effortlessly. That's all we're doing. So then they go, oh, I get that. So anything that's an imposition, like holding a hand point or feeling a bit destabilized by having your feet on the ball and pushing and trying to close your eyes, and the body's like, I don't know how to do that yet. If they understand that it's actually the same thing, it's like internal martial arts. You're teaching the system how to cope with something and to find that space. And then if you prove to them, which I do, if you prove to them that their body works better afterwards, they're in. And I do that. I'll have a punch bag in the room, and if it's useful, and it's not always useful, I'll go punch and kick this at the beginning of the session, and then let's do it afterwards, and let's see if you've improved. And often people's coordination is massively better, their power's better, all of that stuff clicks into place, and they have more connection to self without mental strategy, without will. And so it's a really nice way to look at it. And then when I teach my classes, because I call the ball the hara ball, which is that inner space, physiologically, when you're looking at martial arts, the hara is when the enteric nervous system, the gut area, is kind of cruising on its own. So it's a very old system of ours, but it's when we're our most well and our most proficient. We're not in hyperdrive thinking and working and making things work. We're just in a really good groove. And in martial arts, that's what you want to get to, because that's when your body works really, really well, snappy. And your brain and your body are kind of very, very aligned, and your peripheral vision's fantastic, etc.
Okay, so am I correct in saying, because there's probably different language out there for similar things, would you say that that's similar to when people say getting into flow? So the mind and the body is the same. We've got peripherals and we're not really thinking, but our body just knows what to do, and we're just rolling with it. It's happening on its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's that. And so I've been playing around with these ideas for ages, and then I've just come back from my martial arts class. I have private classes. I couldn't learn in a group at this point. It's really challenging, but it's been really interesting for me because like with my work, but at the yang end, the hardcore end of dealing with imposition to your nervous system and to your safety and all that sort of thing, you learn to respond, you learn to cope with the sensation, you learn to cope with the physiology. I'm finding like that I'm responding to things differently and better implicitly. So I was in bed the other night, my husband's away, I thought there was someone in the garden. I would normally, the best language is collapse. You go into a sort of a fear state and a worry, and then you have to come out of that to go and act. I didn't. I just acted.
Okay.
There's just this oh, fine, okay, well, I'll go deal with that then. There wasn't that collapse. And it's you're building strength and resilience at a nervous system level that then allows you to respond really well. So when you get the body into that place, it gets stronger. And so the language with Hara, with ancient Eastern understanding, is the seat of power, the seat of deep will, deep knowing. And we don't teach it.
No.
We don't know it. You might do it with martial arts, but often it's pretty gung-ho, and Western people don't really learn that. And otherwise we try and get to that place with meditation and breathing techniques, and good luck to you if you're on the spectrum trying to do that stuff. And we try and teach it a lot with people, but it's really hard work. Whereas these exercises, that's where they're taking you, but it's at a very gentle physiological level.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this stuff is more the yin side, and then the yang is something that martial arts would come in and be that little more aggressive, with that nervous system to expand it in that way.
The martial arts is the action.
Yeah.
But the martial arts will say you require that center for action. And then all of their language is that yin space precedes action. It's where all thought, goal, everything comes from. And then you move. Now, you can't have that flow, that if you don't have that inner space inside you, because you've been stuck in an immobilized state forever, your capacity for action is really limited. So people often have poor visual skills. They can't see the peas on the plate. They can't respond quickly. They can't move efficiently. They have very poor interoception. All of that stuff's offline because you're stuck in an immobilized state. And then it's really fun to tinker with it and go, okay, what happens if we bring you out of that state? We get you into that to have a knowledge of that stillness, which is really quite hard one. It's a lot of courage to have to do the work. It's so gentle, but it's still it's really hard work for someone their safety has always been there. They've always been stuck on the rock. And you go, maybe you could come out and do this, but the outcomes are so nice, because a little kid I worked with recently, he was 10, awesome, but he really wanted to work with me because he wanted his tummy to feel better, because he had really bad digestive issues. And I said, well, here's hoping I can be of use to you there, because often this work but the gut gets so tight, the vagus nerve holds the gut, and it's actually the same model as the octopus, isn't it? And so that proved true by the end of the week. So he was very alleviated, and his gut system and his whole digestion, etc., systems were really working better. But he also, because that then allows a point of harmony, he had a much stronger sense of self and a real commitment to do the exercises for himself, not because someone told him to and his mum wants him to, but actually he found them really relevant. And I think that's so significant.
Yeah, it is. And, being 10, it's, it seems young, but he's definitely old enough to want to choose that for himself. So with what you get to see then, Holly, I'm curious, you come into contact with so many different types of people, families, children, professionals, you come from the psych background. So where, what do you see as evolving or shifting in now and into the future for whether it is autism, ADHD, trauma, with starting to incorporate these philosophies instead of just focusing on, the cortex, basically? So what's shifting? What's possible now? What do you see is happening?
I wrote a little article on my website about psychiatrists. This works, follow me, bear with me, not they're sort of the upper echelon of understanding human beings and whatever, but this woman did this great stuff on how psychiatrists know very little about the body and the interaction of the brain and the body. They just kind of see it as the brain and it's all by itself. And we've been like that for so long. And so that's informed all of our therapies, and then it links in with our cultural understanding of that I've got an English background, but that British force yourself, you've got to be in charge, you've got to use your willpower, you've got to be good, all blah blah blah, that sort of stuff. And so we're used to that, and all our therapies are ingrained with that. And then they're ingrained with, it has to be managed, and first of all, you can't do anything. Like, you think Parkinson's, something like that, it's shifting a lot now, because people are starting to go, if I work with the body, I can actually move out of my Parkinson's. And so there's a way in which we're getting more proficient as a whole, because there's so many practitioners all around the world playing in this kind of arena and informing other modalities, that the intricacy of the body and just how much it's got a potential for its own healing. And we have outsourced our own healing for a really long time, and that's shifting. And once a society, I think, understands that, you get a big evolutionary jump in all sorts of things, really. So I think it's there. And I watch people really interested in my work because they know what they're doing isn't enough, and they know it doesn't work, and they're hogtied by what they learned at uni and what they're expected to achieve in a session and all that sort of stuff, which limits the relational context, the co-regulation. And I think, Porges' theory is so cool for that, because it's allowed a language, it's allowed people, he isn't saying anything wildly new. It's just allowing us to know something we already knew before and to validate it. It's simple, really.
Yeah. And I was in that camp. I came from a social worker background, and I was working in trauma, foster care, child safety, and we were always relying on just the cognitive based therapies to help these children. Were we helping them? No. Were we getting any results? No. Did we keep on doing it? Yes. And I couldn't work like that. From my own experience, and it was just anxiety and panic attacks for me, but I started working with the body instead of focusing on my brain or medication. And I realized the power of working with the body. So then I thought, there's something in this. There's something, the body really is the key. And once I opened up that world, everything changed for me, and then I started working with the body instead with children. But yeah, so it's definitely breaking free from the old mode of what you're saying, that we've always been relying on that, your brain, but this body is magical. It's magical, and we've still got so much to learn about it, which is the exciting thing as well. So yeah, I'm glad that we're moving in that direction. So I guess, is there anything that you'd love about this stuff that you would love parents to know that we haven't touched on yet, Holly?
It's probably something akin to what you were saying, but I've only half got it. Because what I wanted to say, I've just got a picture in my head, so I'll give you that, because then my brain will work better. But in the first page of my book, I've got all these animals I've drawn. And this is ages ago, before I was really doing this stuff properly as well. And then I've just got a stick figure with a head on it for the human. And it's like, we understand mammals' body. Like, there's that thing about we've lost touch with ourselves at that level. And so our therapies have been really limited, and our understanding of ourselves has been really limited. But it's fun. I just had that picture in my head. But within that, I think one of the things that's really important is parents learning for themselves how to look after themselves and understand themselves in that interstitial inner body way, finding their own point of stillness, because it does recharge them. It also gives them awareness of what's happening for their child at a deeper, more sensory level. And we've so educated parents into, you have to manage them, they have to do this, they have to, jump so high, and we have to go this way. And I know it's changing, but it's still, there's a lot of behavior modification, there's a lot of behavior management systems in place, and it negates the relationship enormously. And so if you can, I really, especially when I work with mums and kids, like a 10-year-old kid or younger, so at some point they need to emancipate from their mums, so that's really useful because it helps them do that. But often you're really trying to build a bond with them and hold that, so that there's this awareness and connection, because I'll have mums go, oh, now I get it, and I can see his struggles more now. I understand it, because they've grooved down a bit in their own sense of perception and awareness. And the rules are off. If you don't have any rules and you're having to think properly and do the right thing and have some trust in your kid, but all of that, I think, still comes from the same place, which is, that then good luck to you. I always have to say this as well. It's like, good luck to you trying to find that nice Zen spot, because you're a mum and it's really hard, so it's like, you can know it's there sometimes, and at least that's what you know, but at least it's there. I don't think you can always access it, and trying to be like the whole time's impossible and ridiculous.
Not a chance. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that piece up, actually, because I see it, and I'm sure you do too. I see it time and time again, where we've just got these parents that feel like they're failing. There's actually no other word to describe how they're doing except that I'm failing. I'm failing, my child's failing, everybody's failing. And so to change that with this is what a gift, Holly. It's so like life-changing stuff. And especially for that relationship, as you said, bringing them back together, and it not being so results driven and fix it driven and change him or her driven and all of that jazz.
And fear driven. There's a lot of, they're not going to be okay in the world, and we have to, get them right. And, it's a valid feeling. I think it's often, trying to not use annoying, naughty language, but the best preyed upon a little is what came into my head by therapeutic modalities and etc. Often it's shifting again because there's so much need, but it's so fear driven. And I love what the advocacy scene has done for shifting the narrative of neurodiversity, so that there's this appreciation that there's wider ways to live, and there's bigger and bolder and nicer ways to live, rather than a very narrow band of neurotypical appreciation, which barely anyone actually fits into.
I don't know I fit into it. I don't know where I've given up trying to figure it out. I just don't think there is this even neurotypical way of being. I just don't. And I think if we constantly keep trying to find it, like I'm exhausted trying to find it, of whatever that means. So it's, completely.
Tricky language when you start going down that road, but you get into trouble a lot. But I think human beings are vastly interesting. And the more you allow them to explore their inner space and know themselves there, it's vast. And when you look at the internal physiology, it's a mess. Like we're so weirdly wired, and no one looks the same. And so internally, let alone externally, whatever. But there's like, it's good to go back to what you're saying before. The body is so vastly interesting, and it's so vastly sophisticated, and it's so unique and clever. I think we've been trained to ignore that truth, and weirdly, that's where our power is. Or weirdly, we don't get to utilize it because we get trained out of it really, really early. And the luxury, I think, of being autistic is people can't get trained out of it, because they're sort of stuck in their individuality. So that actually gets to be explored and expressed. They have connection to a whole wider way of thinking and all sorts of cool things that are less suppressed by the common culture.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I like that. So Holly, what's next for you? If people want to read up more, find out more, where can they find you? What are you creating? I know you've got a course coming up and that new book and everything. So tell us about that.
So my website's www.zebr.co. So it's zebra without the A. It's just being revamped as we speak. I have a new edition of my book coming out. So I've taken it back under my umbrella. It was with a London publisher, but the contract was up. So it was kind of fun to bring it back because I can play around with it a bit more. So that's about to launch as well. And then I did a 6-week program last year, Reframing Autism from the Inside Out, which is a 6-week course going through the history and then the sort of the physiology and things like that, and brain plasticity, and just little pockets of all of that stuff, and then a couple of my exercises so people can get a good grounding in them. I did it live, so I had weekly live calls, so that's in the course as well, so it just fills it out a little bit more. It's really nice. So that's launching soon as well, and that will just be an evergreen course on my site as well, so people can go there. It won't be, I don't know when this is going live, but it will be up shortly. Yeah, so all of that's happening, which is really fun. I'm also training therapists, so because it's starting, it gets bigger. Like I've got a really long wait list, and so I need to train people so they can move out and do it well, because people, they're snappy and they go, oh, I can do that, that's fine, really, you know, and they can't. There's lots of things to unlearn.
Yeah.
Is the main thing. Lots and lots. And then knowing where you can push and where you have to back up, and that, you know, it's very delicate interplay. So I've got first years, I've got a second years, so they'll be out next year under supervision. So it's a 3-year course. It's been pretty full on to create it, but really fun. Really fun. It's good fun, and we do talk about jellyfish and things because you just play with the physiology, and there's all sorts of fun stuff. But it is very scientific as well, and then it's got all the therapeutic aspects as well. So all that's happening. So I'm quite busy.
You're so
but it's really good, and it makes me happy. And I you know, my second years now, they, at the end of last year, they're kind of like, when I did all the teaching, but we did a mini intensive, so 3 days where I worked with them, and then they went, oh, now I see what it is, because it's so experiential. You have to understand it at that level. And then this year they've got even more. Then, you know, now they've gone, oh, now I understand. And so they're just coming into more and more awareness about what this is. And it's fascinated me how long, not in a bad way, but just how long it's taken to bring them into an intellectual awareness, a physiological awareness, and then an awareness of themselves and the power they have, like internal proper power, to gently, kindly, respectfully affect change for people. And it's really fun. So that's, you know, so I'm doing that. And then because I can travel again shortly, I'm going to probably go east and do a tour next year, and I'll probably go to the Northern Hemisphere like I did before. I was doing a lot of travel to, you know, New York and London and etc. before. So that will kind of pick up again as well.
Great. That's a lot. It's a lot. So really the best point of call will be the website. So that's got all of the information. I'll make sure that I pop a link to the website with wherever you're watching this, so that you can always keep up to date with what Holly's got going on. So, I mean, yeah, I just find this so exciting, and I haven't met anybody that's been able to describe it or explain something like this, like you have, Holly. It's really grounded in, and it just makes sense. It makes sense to me. I don't know how you feel about watching this or listening to this, but it just makes sense. So, yeah, how awesome that it's, you know, reaching everywhere in the world.
It's what people say the most. They go, oh, that just makes so much sense. Like, it's the most normal thing in the world, really, but we're so divorced from it.
Yeah.
For now.
But
we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, but we're unlearning. I'm happy to be in the unlearning camp, and I think that's what you're creating too, a lot of unlearning, which is great. So it's been so great chatting with you. Thank you, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 6 months, 12 months, few years. A lot.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you. It's so nice to meet you. Really nice.
Thanks, Ollie. See you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.